Audiomatic.
Hello friends, welcome to the new episode of Ask Aakar Anything on Audiomatic. You can record your questions on your phone and email them to me at aaa@audiomatic.in. You can also send in your questions at facebook.com/audiomaticin. Our Twitter handle is @audiomaticin. Let's begin the show with this question.
Hi Aakar, my name is Rajiv. I'm calling from Delhi. Why do we honk so much as we do? Do you also get annoyed by the honking sound? What can be done about it?
Why do we honk so much? Good question, Rajiv. You know, something really interesting I learned the other day was that manufacturers of high-end cars, BMW and Mercedes-Benz, they built their cars entirely from a material that's sent from Europe. So these are called CBUs. The one part of the car that is Indian is the horn. And the reason the Times of India said was that the horns that they brought from Europe couldn't stand Indian conditions. What are these conditions? The first is that we honk too often. That a European-made horn wouldn't last more than a week in India because we used it all the time. The other thing was that it wasn't loud enough. And I think this gives us our clue. I have always felt that the Indian culture asks and expects its individuals to look inwards. If you read the Gita, it tells you to eschew the external senses. I think one aspect of it is shutting your mind out to what is outside. We are tolerant in many ways. One way is we are able to withstand the sight of large mounds of garbage. We are able to withstand smells that our cities are full of, and we are able to withstand very large volumes of sound. I think the reason we honk so much is twofold. One is that the person doing the honking isn't really looking to anybody else. I think what he wants is his way or her way. As long as that happens quickly enough, he or she doesn't care what the other side is put through. And so I think inflicting this sound is not necessarily seen as a problem. The other, as I said, was that listening to it is not really a problem. I don't think most of us mind being around so much noise. If we did, there wouldn't be as much noise on our streets as there is. Am I affected by it? Yes, of course I am. As a writer, I need quiet, I need solitude as well. That's one reason why the flat I've bought, while it may not be very large or a very expensive one, is on a dead end where very little of the traffic sound comes, and I think it is my refuge. To those Indians who have a problem with sounds on the street, I would recommend a set of earplugs made by a company called Howard Light. They sort of fit in your ear. They shut off the sharpness of the sound. It's something that I use when I go for my run every day, and I suggest you do the same.
Hi Aakar, this is Saurabh from Chandigarh. Why do you think that the Indian television industry, except for the few instances here and there, have failed to produce any quality television series?
Saurabh, I think the answer is twofold. The easy way of looking at it would be to say, well, we do have quality TV series and those are the ones that are hits. For instance, the Saas Bahu serials from 15 years ago. And these had at their peak viewerships of 18 and 19 TRP, which would represent about a fifth of the total audience, which is huge. So in a way, we do have very high quality serials and those are the ones that are popular. I think there is a slightly granular way of looking at it, and in my opinion, the only major nation on earth that is bilingual. So you have an elite which reads and writes primarily in a language that is English, but it consumes its entertainment in a second language, which is Hindi. Now, what happens is we have access to very high quality TV. Those of us who are anglicized and urban, who also tend to be the most discerning Indians, we have access to very high quality TV in English. We've got Mad Men and Friends and that sort of thing. So we don't necessarily need that high quality end to TV because we have access to it. I think the real challenge will be when Hindi and Gujarati and Bengali start to come up with high quality, by which is meant expensive TV. Will that happen? I'm not sure it's going to happen in the next decade or two, because as long as prosperity and the urban space is linked with English, I think the easy access to US and UK TV programming will mean that vacuum that we feel, that you and I feel, is not really there. email question from Deepika in Mumbai. What do you think of the backlash against Indian media in Nepal? Do you think there was excessive gloating involved around the relief work India is doing there? Deepika, I think Indians ought to realize that there is no neighbor of ours that really likes us. Pakistan and our feelings towards it, their feelings towards us, everybody is familiar with. But if you look at Lanka, if you look at Burma, if you look at Bangladesh, if you look at Nepal, if you look at any country, China, Bhutan, there is absolutely nobody who is a neighbor of India's that's really fond of us, that loves us. I'm not saying nations ought to love one another, but I think that the dislike is very strongly felt, and one reason for it has come up with this Nepal quake business. I think that our world as Indians is very self-centered. We tend to place ourselves at the center of every story, not just the earthquake. If you think of Nobel Prize winners who have Indian origins in the US, who don't really see themselves as being Indians, but as US citizens, we tend to own them as well. All the successes of the world that are even partially Indian in nature, we tend to claim as our own. We ought not to be surprised, given all of this, that the Nepalese feel a little hurt or a little put off by the fact that Indians tend to insert themselves, ourselves, into every form of the news, including tragedies.
Hi, I'm Latika from Pune. What do you think of Chetan Bhagat's performance as a judge of a reality show on TV?
Latika, I think Chetan Bhagat is fantastic as a judge, and I expected him to be. I think he's a very bright man. When I was a young man in my teens and in Surat, all the English fiction that we used to read and had access to, the books that were sold in the bookstores that were around at that time, were of foreign authors. Irving Wallace and Sidney Sheldon, James Hadley Chase, and writers like that, Barbara Cartland. Indian authors, while there were a few, were not really widely read. I think the US and UK authors, P.J. Woodhouse, for instance, would have outsold at the A.H. Wheeler stores the Indian authors like Shobha De 10-1 or even 20-1. Chetan Bhagat has single-handedly turned that around. I think that this is the first time ever in our history that an Indian is the most widely read, widely sold Indian author in English. And I think it's remarkable that he should have done that. On TV, I think he understands the way the game is played. The first thing is he puts himself out. If you notice, he has no shyness about him, or if he had, he's set that aside and goes to the stage and does his little antic for the day. The other thing is he knows that in India, celebrity is everything. Ghalib said, "Badnaam honge to kya naam na hoga." It doesn't matter what it is that you do, whether you achieve fame or notoriety. As long as you're in the public eye, for some reason you're good. Chetan Bhagat understands that. I think we will see more of him on TV, and I think what we will see of him will be very good as well. We have an email question from Rao in Chennai. Who would be the ideal guests at your dinner party, living or dead? Excellent question. The first thought that came to my mind is that we ought to get the leaders of all the religions from the past, the Prophet Muhammad, maybe Buddha, Jesus Christ, have a little conversation with them, ask them what they thought about the mess we've made of the world and of their place in it. That sounded to me to be too grim for a dinner party. The other option I had was thinking about the right women to be with me, and the second thought that popped up was at what age. So having Marilyn Monroe in her 70s made no sense, so I would have picked Marilyn Monroe in the 1950s when she was in her 30s. I would pick Priyanka Chopra. I would pick Madhubala when she was in her 30s. The conversation at that party might not be very good, I accept, but I think it might be a little more entertaining than the first one. Having thought of these two, I discarded both of them, and I remembered a text that I had read a few years ago. It's called Symposium, which is a Greek word for party. In it, Socrates, as described by Plato, is a little drunk. He is with his friends, and these friends are describing the nature of love. The most striking bit of this party comes when the playwright Aristophanes speaks on the nature of love. And he tells this little story, which I'm paraphrasing, that when the gods first made humans, they made them spherical, with 4 eyes, 4 hands, 4 legs, and so on. These rotund, round human beings rolled around the world, but they got arrogant. So to teach them a lesson, the gods cut them down the middle, each with 1 head, 2 eyes, 2 hands, and 2 legs, just the way we are now. But they were separated from that other half that they had been joined together with. And love is all of us human beings forever wandering around the earth, all of our lives, looking for that other half that fits us perfectly and are never able to. I think that was fantastic. I would have wanted not those people to be at my dinner party, but for me to be at that symposium party which happened 4 centuries before the birth of Christ. That would have been fantastic.
Hi Aakar, this is Priyanka Shetty from Bombay. My question to you is, Rahul Gandhi seems to have come back with a solid plan. Where do you think he's headed in the next 10 years?
Has he come back with a solid plan, Priyanka? I'm not so sure. A plan would indicate strategy. I'm not so clear on what Rahul Gandhi's strategy is. I can see a series of tactics, and I think the tactic is to be noisy, to be visible, to be accessible to the press, to pick up whatever issue is in the headlines for the day, whether it's farmers or whether it's the internet, whether it's flat buyers. Is it working? I would say it is, that he is getting into the headlines. He's making sure that he's on the front pages of the newspapers most days, which he wasn't for many years able to do. And when he did make it to the front page, it was for the wrong reasons. So I think that purely as a tactic, it's working. What he does need, assuming he doesn't have one already, is an all-encompassing strategy so that when people write about or speak about what it is that he's doing, they can locate it within that strategy. For instance, Modi, when he broke out from being a regional leader to a national one, had a very clearly defined strategy that Delhi was corrupt, that Delhi was ineffete, that Delhi was pandering to people, and that he was an outsider. He could come in and clean it up the way that he had done in Gujarat. From there, everything that he said could plug into that one overarching strategy. I think Rahul Gandhi needs to be able to define what it is, which he hasn't done so far. But as I said, his comeback has been noisy, it's been loud, and I think overall it has been effective. Where he'll be 10 years from now, I think, is not really a question that needs too much time to be answered. The Congress is a private limited company. All the shares are owned by the Gandhis. I think Rahul Gandhi will remain in the family, of course, and I think he will remain in charge of the Congress.
Hi Aakar, I'm Arun from Bangalore and I'm a journalism student. I recently read somewhere that lots of journalists are leaving the profession to join PR. Is it true? And what do you think about this current trend?
It's been true, Arun, for a very long time. The PR profession began to thrive about 20 years ago when I first came into journalism, and increasingly large numbers of smart people, many of them women, left journalism to join PR. Is it a good or bad thing? I'm not sure. I think it's a profession just as many other. You might think of journalism as being exalted in some ways or noble, but I'm sure that somebody in PR might think the same about their own work. So I don't think it's a problem as such. I think that we ought to understand that the business of journalism has increasingly become like PR, and I think that is the more disturbing trend. I don't want to go on about this, but I think that if you read about what's going on in our newspapers and on our TV channels, and I mean how the content that they put out is actually influenced very heavily by advertising and by corporates, it's very disturbing. It doesn't happen in too many other democracies. That is something that we ought to watch out for. Lots of people have been writing in to ask what they can do to help in Nepal. Here are some suggestions. Donate to the Prime Minister's Relief Fund, which is likely to extend its mandate to include Nepal, or go to goonj.org, goonj.org. They're a fantastic organization. The Times of India with Fab India has been running a drive, and you can find it on their website, where you can donate supplies. For more information and for all the details, go to our Facebook page, www.facebook.com/audiomaticin. So then see you, friends. Stay tuned for the next episode of Ask Aakar Anything on audiomatic.in every Wednesday. You can send in your recorded questions or just email them to me at aaa@audiomatic.in. Also on audiomatic.in, you can listen to another great podcast from my friends Padmaparna and Samant. The Intersection tells fascinating stories from science, history and culture. The current episode talks about the science of earthquake and gives insights into the horrific Nepal earthquake.
Audiomatic. You can find us at audiomatic.in or look for our shows on SoundCloud, iTunes and Stitcher.